So, good afternoon, Facebook friends and family, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Chris Lambert. I'm the founder and CEO of Life Remodeled. For those of you who are not familiar with Life Remodeled, we exist to bridge people across divides to help transform each other's lives. And the way we do that is by revitalizing neighborhoods in Detroit. Today, I am excited to hear the perspectives of our esteemed guests. So please join me in welcoming Rabbi Paul Yedwab, who serves as one of the spiritual leaders of Temple Israel, located in West Bloomfield. By the way, Temple Israel is the largest Jewish temple in the entire country. Rabbi Yedwab is the past president of the Michigan Board of Rabbis, and he's published 6 books, including one that has a very interesting title called Sex in the Text. Rabbi, we might have to do a special show about that another time. But the rabbi has also led more initiatives here in Metro Detroit than we possibly have time to mention on this show. So please join me in welcoming Rabbi Paul. That was your opportunity to say hello or whatnot, but hello. Okay, they're there. Okay, so we're going to turn to Paul Blatt, aka not a rabbi, Paul. Paul Blatt serves as the president and CEO of JVS Human Services, a human service organization based in Southfield, Michigan, that invests more than $20 million per year into their mission of enhancing the lives of job seekers, people with disabilities, and seniors. As a side note, if you ever find yourself ordering pizza at 2 a.m. during the annual policy conference at Mackinac Island, Paul just may come to your rescue with a coupon in hand. That is a side joke that no one but Paul and I will understand, but that's how we met. So welcome also Sarah Allen, who is the executive director of the Detroit chapter of a national organization called Repair the World. Repair the World mobilizes Jews and their communities to take action to pursue a just world, ignite a lifelong commitment to service, and by 2030, Repair will inspire and catalyze 1 million acts of service toward repairing our world. When she's not working, Sarah can be found jogging through her Woodbridge neighborhood or ordering from the left side of the menu at the Yemen Cafe. Welcome, everyone. And right now, we're going to dive right in. So, Rabbi Paul, I'd like to start with you. I've been told that Temple Israel has really been ahead of the curve when it comes to responding to COVID-19. So could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and I take absolutely no credit for it because on March 11th, I left for Morocco with 50 of my members, and no one was talking about, we were talking about social distancing already, but no one was talking about closing down events, canceling things, and so on. And we escaped from Morocco on the last plane, literally, out of Morocco. And when we got back, everything had been transformed. My colleagues at Temple and working with the Federation had convinced the entire Jewish community in the course of those 4 days to shut down all bar mitzvahs and weddings, a very painful thing to do, to restrict funerals severely, and to close our institutions completely, and to go virtual. And they transformed Temple Israel and other Jewish institutions into virtual communities seemingly overnight. So I came back to see this. And the reason I really am proud of this is that the highest Jewish ideal is pikuach nefesh, the saving of a life. And when we left Morocco, there was no coronavirus there, or virtually none. Right after we left, there was a wedding, and many Moroccans from France came, I think 200, came to the wedding, and suddenly there was a nexus of an outbreak which ended up killing many, many, many people. So each of those bar mitzvahs that they canceled, each of those weddings they canceled, including the wedding of my own daughter, ended up saving lives. So according to, even though it was the worst decision you can make in terms of pain, in terms of pikuach nefesh, the saving of life, they were way ahead of the curve, way ahead of the state of Michigan, way ahead of the CDC, and I do believe that they fulfilled our sacred obligation to save lives.
Well, that's super powerful, and thank you for doing that. So I assume people who had their weddings scheduled are just going to push those back. How about bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs?
My daughter just sent out her unsave the date postcard, and we are calling it a pop-up wedding. We don't really know when it's going to be or how many people will be there, but eventually people will be told that it's time. And the bar mitzvahs are very similar. Many of them have been postponed into the fall, but we don't even know 100% that we'll be able to follow through on those dates either. So we're working with people to recognize what's really important. And I always say to my wedding couples, if the right bride has found the right groom and the right groom has found the right bride, it's all going to be fine, I promise you.
I agree with that. All right, so Paul Blatt, I think when some people think about Jewish communities in America, they may only be familiar with stereotypes of affluence. And however, we all know that's not the whole picture, and that there were a number of people in our local Jewish community who struggled financially even before COVID-19. So your organization, JVS, has a very long history of serving people in need, including Jews and many others. So what is JVS doing differently right now to best serve people in their time of need?
Sure. So there are many Jews in our community that are often needing and looking forward to improve their lives. And so we've always been there for the 78 years of JVS. I think for what we're doing right now, our team, similar to what happened with the temples and synagogues, pivoted very quickly. And we were able to take all of our job supports and our financial literacy and move them to video conferencing like this and one-on-one conversations and helping people continue to be supported. One of the things that JVS does, it's about inspiring hope. And at this time, that's what people probably need most. We are positioned and ready to help our Jewish community, but as you know, Chris, with our career center that sits down at Durfee Innovation Society and we are, those doors are closed right now, but our staff are working remotely to help Detroiters throughout this time. And as people are ready, and I think right now, job seekers and a lot of our community is hunkered down, not really sure, a little bit paralyzed on what their next steps are. And our team has assured me that when people are ready to emerge and come out of this hibernation, that we'll be ready to help them in the next stages of their lives. When people have financial needs right now, we want to help them working with their banks and working with their funders, talking about how to manage through cash flow at a very tough time when money feels limited. That's one of the things that we do best. And so we're just here for the entire community to support and be ready for them, our next steps.
Excellent. That's powerful work that you're doing at JVS. And thank you for how you're inspiring hope right now. I would agree with you. That's about the most important thing we can do. So Sarah, I think that Repair the World and Life Remodeled have a lot in common, including the fact that we both mobilize thousands of volunteers. Your organization serves all over the world, but your chapter's focus is right here in the city of Detroit and the region. So what are some of the ways that you're engaging your volunteers during this pandemic?
Yeah, sure. First of all, Chris, thank you so much for having me on. Thanks for thinking of Repair the World. It's really an honor to be here. I want to name that there's a tension in being a service organization between wanting to be on the front lines and in community, because that's how we believe service is best done, in community and alongside our neighbors. There's this tension of wanting to be there and doing that, and staying home, which in and of itself right now is an act of service. We at Repair the World, we recognize that none of us are safe unless all of us are safe. None of us are healthy unless all of us are healthy. And so our mission right now is to engage the Jewish community in meaningful but remote and virtual service around those essential needs. And really what we do is we turn to our partners out in community first. because they're the ones who are going to inform us of what they need in this moment most urgently. And it took a little bit of time. Repair was ready to mobilize really, really quickly. In a week, we shut down our office. We started working from home, and we started thinking about how we could engage virtually. And we had to take a moment because our partners were reeling from this intense transition. And we had to stop and say, all right, we are here to support you. What do you need? And if that takes time, we're going to give you the time that you need. So it's been a few weeks now, and what we're hearing from our partners is that they are in dire need of funds and supplies. And right now, that is what we are trying to engage our community of volunteers around. So we have opportunities for remote and virtual service in the form of packaging up supply kits. We're starting to engage people in giving circles, which is a community of folks who have committed to giving and learning together as a community. And right now we're really working with our partners like Keep Growing Detroit, like Gleaners Community Food Bank, like the Southwest Mutual Aid Fund to address those most pressing and most urgent needs.
Yeah, I want to say I get your weekly or however they are monthly newsletters. I get the Repair the World national newsletters, and I'm going to say I've been very impressed by the way that you locally and nationally have been engaging volunteers virtually, and then everything that you just said as well. Rabbi Paul, I want to turn back to you, and I hope the answer to this question is no, but I do want to ask, has anyone in your congregation been diagnosed with COVID-19 or passed away with COVID-19 or lost a loved one?
Yeah, yesterday I did 3 funerals, Sunday, and I think one of them, only one, was a COVID-19 victim, but he was a dear friend, and it was very, very difficult. And unfortunately, we've done at this point many funerals. I believe they've all been older people at this point, but I do want to say this. One of my best friends, who's younger than I am, got this disease and was really on the edge. Had to go to the hospital. This is not a disease that you want to get, even if you're young. And I just would, I don't want to make this a PSA, but, hunker down, stay safe, wear your masks, do all the things they're telling, social distancing. This is not a disease. We've had scores of people with this disease, and I can tell you it is not a disease that you should be cavalier about.
Thank you for saying that. I couldn't agree more. 4 people that I knew personally are no longer with us directly because of COVID-19. One was a pretty good friend. The other I knew pretty well as well, but I'm guessing several of you on this call knew Marlo Stoudemire, who was only 43 years old, had no underlying health conditions, and hadn't traveled anywhere recently prior to his passing. His family wasn't able to visit him in the ICU, and probably no one will ever see Marlo's body again who knew him this side of eternity. So, Rabbi Paul, I want to ask you, how do people mourn when things have changed so significantly when it comes to our understanding of mourning and grieving? And what does a funeral look like in this time?
Well, the Jewish idea of mourning is that you're surrounded by people. That's what Shiva is all about. And of course, this is very painful because you come to the cemetery, there are only your family, less than 10 people, standing all spread out over the cemetery, not able to give each other a hug. We still do a eulogy. But for instance, there's a Jewish custom of placing earth on the casket. And now you can only do that custom if you bring your own shovel. And probably the worst part of it is when you go back to your house, you're alone. There's not people coming in with food, and there's not a Shiva service a memorial service that evening at your house. The whole idea of Judaism is that we command that you have to gather in groups of at least 10 people. And unfortunately, that's not happening. I will say that Zoom has helped. We did our first Zoom funeral the other day, and actually, I will say it was somewhat comforting. Just as we did our Passover Seder with 3 people here, and we had 30 people all over the country zooming in. It's not as there's actually some real comfort and in that. I will say there was one of the funerals we did. They arranged with the Bloomfield police that when the family left the cemetery, they sort of drove around a parking lot with their windows closed, but people were honking and showing support in that way. So people are desperate to feel a connection and to make connection, and they're doing so, but not in the way that Judaism would demand.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So Sarah, let's go back to you and talk a little bit more about the future of volunteerism, right? You've talked about what you're doing in the present. And I know everyone on this call knows that every year Life Remodeled mobilizes 10,000 volunteers in 6 days. Well, this year, because of COVID-19, we're definitely making some major changes to our strategy. We're purposely going to engage far less than 10,000 volunteers, probably more like 5,000 or less. We're going to move the project to later in 2020. We're going to make several other changes to make for an extremely safe environment. But Sarah, how much do you think COVID-19 is going to change volunteerism over the next year?
Well, I think there are going to be new and substantial needs. So the opportunity for folks like us, Chris, is tremendous. I mean, we're going to see so many opportunities to serve our community. And I think what's important is that we do it together. Is that all of these organizations who want to serve and who want to mobilize their communities in volunteerism work together so that we're greater than the sum of our parts. It's so hard to say at this point what our future is going to look like and what the new normal will be. But I think it's safe to say that there will be significant need as we try to recover in supporting our most vulnerable communities and populations. And many of these organizations that provide essential services like food and shelter and education will need our support more than ever once we're out of this quarantine situation. I think that I would consider all of us to think of service a little bit more broadly and Repair the World's model in doing good service really includes working alongside communities and never sort of in the driver's seat, but really listening to what communities need and giving communities what they ask for. And that's going to be so important as we emerge from this crisis. Sometimes what I say, especially to teenagers and middle schoolers who do service with us, is that sometimes service is not sexy and it's not your idea of cool. You can't always be painting a mural. Sometimes service looks like stuffing envelopes or phone banking or asking the people you love in your network to make a contribution. And we all need to keep that in mind now more than ever as we step up and say, we are here for you. What do you need? And it really is a tremendous opportunity. And as a Jewish person, it's something that I feel is required of me. And my faith brings me to that. And I know that that's true for you, Chris. And I know that's true for a lot of folks in our community.
I love that your mission's about inspiring people to a lifetime of service, a lifestyle, right? Not just 1 or 2 events. And I think we both share that passion. And it's great to see all that work that you've done in the past really paying off in such a critical time in society that we're in right now. So Paul Blatt, JVS is a major player in workforce development, right? Including the fact that you lead the largest Detroit at Work site in the entire city. You already mentioned that happens to be located in our Durfee Innovation Society. And I want to say that even though I've been working from home like crazy, I feel this massive void in my soul because I feel limited, kind of like what Sarah said earlier. I feel so limited on what I can do from the confines of my own house. It's almost like I feel like I've got a straitjacket on and have had my legs tied. And while my experience pales in comparison to being jobless, I do think it's helped me gain just a glimpse of understanding of the reality that being unemployed can drastically affect your sense of purpose and meaning in the world. So I want to ask you, once we get back to work, what does workforce development look like over the next 6 months for the fact that so many people are on unemployment right now?
So let me first share a little bit about myself. So 12 years ago, before coming to JVS, I was 13 months unemployed. And during that time, wonderful that I had a community around me and people that were supportive. And all of those people were saying to me, hey, everything will work out. And my response to them was always, I believe you, but right now it feels really cruddy. And I actually used to use a different word. But you
can say those words on this show. Just
okay,
so.
I wasn't sure, with the rabbi sitting next to me here. So, so I think that's the first place to start, is that people are hurting, right? And we need to recognize that people are feeling cruddy, and we need to let people know that we as a community are going to come out on the other side of this. It's going to be slower than I think we all hoped it will be, and slower than we want. And it's never going to move fast enough for somebody that's sitting at home on unemployment. And I would encourage people to be patient with themselves and be patient with their family members that are experiencing unemployment. Unemployment is the most unnatural thing that adults are having to experience, because you're supposed to be out there and being a part of the community, and a piece of you is lost. Like you were describing, just sitting at home, you feel like a piece is lost. When you lose part of that identity, it will come back, right? And we will all be stronger, and people need to have that faith and that belief that that we're going to be able to all come together in a month, or 2 months, 6 months, 18 months, whatever it is. And we'll have that confidence again that we had 2 months ago with 3% unemployment. So we will be here. I encourage people right now, get on your LinkedIn, get on your Facebook, build your connections, do things that you can control right now, so that when we're all able to get into action, you're ready.
Excellent. Rabbi Paul, let's talk about religious life over the next 6 months. How do you see the coronavirus affecting religious life and practices at Temple Israel over the next 6 months?
Well, as I said, all credit to my colleagues. While I was gone, they literally transformed our community into a virtual community. And we've been trying to improve our online presence ever since. My wife, who is just the most amazing person, went to 4 different Best Buys around the county in order to pick up 6 external microphones for our phones, so that we could improve the audio quality of our services. And what I'm really afraid of is that people are going to like it too much, because they can sit in their homes and rise for the Shema and be seated, and we're making it very good. I think the quality has become pretty good. We had 15,000 people tune into our online Seder Passover. So my real fear is that we're going to get too good at this, and our people are going to like it too much, and we'll basically never see them again. So that's what I'm hoping it doesn't happen. I'm hoping the opposite happens, that once they can come back, they'll realize what they were missing and how important a minyan, how important being in a group really, really is. And but I do have that fear, I have to say.
So to someone who's sitting at home right now watching this and not seeing anything wrong with what you just said, and they're thinking, well, no, this is better. I don't agree with the rabbi right now. Convince that person right now why they need to come to services physically and be around other people.
Yeah, well, the other side of my fear is that is another theory, that when this is all over, the natural human need for human touch, for companionship, is going to come back with a vengeance, and that people are going to flock to our synagogue and to churches and mosques around the country. Although there are going to be some changes. So just let me give you one example. We used to call Temple the kissing congregation, because the tradition was everyone you saw, you gave a hug and you kissed them and wished them Shabbat Shalom, a good Sabbath. And now I'm calling us the Namaste congregation. You bow at someone from afar and wish them well. But Dr. Fauci, I think, said that no one should ever shake hands again.
Yep.
And that's probably true. And so even if they do come back to us, I think we're going to be changed forever.
That's really interesting to hear you say that, coming from a congregation that has practices that are so intimate. So let's just talk about when this stay-at-home order gets lifted. I mean, maybe it'll happen May 1st. I don't know. But if it does, and congregations are allowed to meet together in large numbers again, do you think Temple Israel is going to do it right away? Or are you going to hold off, or are you going to make changes in how many people can come at a time? Because you have the largest temple in the entire country.
Yeah, we have the largest congregation in the world, and we think the universe, but we're not 100% sure.
The world, really?
Yeah, we think the universe, but not 100% sure about that. So, you know, we've been having lots of meetings about this. How do you do a socially distanced bar mitzvah? How do you have a socially distanced high holidays? I'm really afraid it's going to be longer than the 2 months. You know, I hate to say this to everyone, but I'm fairly pessimistic about the time frame for when large groups will be able to get together to go to high holiday services or Lions games, for that matter. Of course, not going to a high holiday service is more of a sacrifice than not going to a Lions game, but you know, because at least we win sometimes. But I think we have to plan for this virtual community going on longer than any of us would hope.
Yeah, it's going to be real tricky, right? With the politics at play and all of this, you have a lot of different forces coming at this from many different angles. And unfortunately, something that I hope would unite us in many ways, I think is going to lead to some real division over when and how and why and what. But let's talk a little bit more about predicting out even a little bit further. So I come from the mindset, like everyone on this call, I have strong concerns about the future as well, Rabbi. I'm not a doom and gloom type of person, but I think we're entering into what some might call a mini ice age, because this is a global pandemic and we don't have a shot for it. We don't have pills for it. We don't have a solution to it. It's going to be very hard to get this contained in various countries around the world. And we're a global economy. I think at least economically speaking, we're going to see a drastic change in our economy over the next 1 to 3 years. That's my opinion. I believe nonprofits are going to have to change dramatically just because of the economics. But I believe even more important than the economics, like what you said, Sarah, we need to be listening to the people that we serve and figure out what do they need in the new normal. So our organization has basically written down all of our strategies on a piece of paper, crumpled up that piece of paper, threw it behind our back, and we said, let's reimagine the future based on what we predict people are going to need, not just in the short term, but the long term is going to be even more difficult. So a year from now, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years from now, what do you think your organizations might be doing differently in the new normal? Let's start with you, Sarah.
I agree with you, Chris. It's a precarious moment, especially for nonprofit organizations. One thing I do want to say is that our funders and supporters at Repair the World have been so generous, so flexible, and so understanding. We have some incredible funders and stakeholders right here in the Metro Detroit area who have reached out and said to me, what do you need? How do you need to pivot? We're here to support you. Just let us know. And without them, I don't think that we could do the work that we're doing right now without that kind of support. And so I really hope that my colleagues and my friends and other nonprofit organizations are feeling that as well. And if you're not, let me know. How can I help? I think that 1 year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, it's all up in the air. It's so hard to say. One thing that I think has been really, really incredible in this time is our ability to become more agile. We're sort of building that muscle of agility, and I think that's an asset for us in the future. So we've never had to pivot like we have had to pivot in the past few weeks. We've never had to completely shift the way that we do programming and the way that we do service like we have in the past few weeks. But because we have, Now we know we can. And I think that's only going to serve us in the future. What our organization looks like will depend on what the needs of the community and our partners are. And what I can say is that we are flexing our muscles around innovation and around agility, and we will be prepared to serve.
I believe that. Paul Blatt or Rabbi Paul, you have any thoughts on 1 year out or further?
Go ahead, Paul. Rabbi? Nope, me? He froze, I think. So I guess I'll jump in.
I thought this was the battle for humility here. You guys were just going to have a silence contest so you could go the longest.
I think he got scared by the
Paul, do you want to try? Well, although
You there? Okay. So I'll jump in. I think 12 years ago during the Great Recession, I watched our team transform the way we delivered services to helping, 50 new people walking through our door every few days. And I know that our agency has the ability to meet that need. I'm excited by the technology that we can use now to engage more people on a regular basis. It's going to be a trickle. And I think the biggest thing that we need to encourage people to be doing is to practice patience. I think the more patient we are and the more we can learn about how to live in a social distancing environment and to remove seats in a room and serve less people at a time, maybe to continue to still meet the need of the community, but do it safely. I think we can do it. I'm confident that we can all do it. And it's just that people have to be prepared for that change. So I think if people are willing, and I think the desire to get back in the community, people are going to be willing to do it differently. I think we're all going to be all right.
I hear that. Rabbi Paul, anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I would just say that although I expressed worry about the short and midterm, I am very optimistic about the long term. And the reason is, in my 33 years as a rabbi, we've had recessions and crises, but this is the first one where there's a hard ending. We know there's going to be an end to this. Every day I get emails from my members telling me that Israel is just about to discover the vaccine for the coronavirus. Jews believe that all medical innovations are going to come out of Israel. But the truth is, it is going to happen. And there is going to be a time when this disappears. And when it does, I think that God's gift of amnesia, God has given us this gift of amnesia for pain. And I think it's going to set in. And I believe, although we may be changed, there's no reason not to believe that we won't be as strong or stronger than we were before.
I was trying to find a book that I love called Startup Nation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've all read it. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if the vaccine comes out of Israel. I'm amazed by the inventions that do every single day. So, we're all spiritual leaders here. And I say I take great confidence in the future for a lot of reasons. And one is this: I am convinced that God has been preparing all of us for this time in history our entire lives. And we all know pandemics are not new to human civilization, but they're very rare. And so I consider it a tremendous honor that we get to be alive and prepared during such an important time in human history, in Metro Detroit's history. And I'm very confident, largely because of great people like yourselves. So I want to turn to a few comments and questions from our Facebook friends. Someone said earlier, Rabbi, you are not being pessimistic at all, but you're speaking from a loving reality. And a good friend of mine, Doug Stewart, who is the executive director of the Fisher Foundation. Now, I'm not going to pronounce this Hebrew word right, so forgive me in advance, but he's interested in how the panel feels the core Jewish value of Tzedakah. Did I say that right?
Tzedakah, yeah.
Well, so you said it right. How do you say it?
Tzedakah, or
Tzedakah, which is justice. How will that value play out after the crisis, understanding that those who were disproportionately impacted by the virus are disproportionately underserved by our safety, health, education, and economic systems? Who wants to jump in on that?
That's a Sarah
I love
question,
this
if I ever heard one.
That's a good, who asked this question? Thank you
Doug
for this
Stewart.
question. Oh, Doug, thank you for this question. This is a great question. Yeah, the root of the word tzedakah is tzedek, which means justice. A lot of people confuse the word tzedakah for money or giving money specifically. And actually, it comes from this word justice. And I think that we have to keep in mind that this is a pandemic that we are all facing, but it's not the same for everyone. Some of the underlying and fundamental injustices that we see in our society are playing out more broadly and are being felt more deeply by those who are impacted. And something that I really, really hope that our communities can remember is that even after we are over this major, major hump, we've got lots of neighbors and friends and folks in our community who are still facing things like not enough access to healthy and affordable food, not enough access to quality education. These are things that our neighbors are facing every day. And we can't become complacent just because the pandemic is no longer affecting us and our families. You have to stay involved in service. You have to stay civically active, go vote, and make the longer term systemic changes, be a part of that. It's critical.
You know, I've heard one of my friends told me that he thinks the future of philanthropy is going to be changed in one sense in a positive way, because all of us now have experienced some significant pain and grief and grieving through this epidemic. And for maybe many people who did not have a tremendous amount of grief or struggle in their life, who may come from a place of comfort, it might actually help a number of people be able to identify a little bit more with the fact that people who have been disproportionately experiencing injustice prior to COVID-19 are now experiencing even more. And it could tap into even more love and even more hope and even more philanthropic endeavor. And I'm gonna believe that as well.
I hope so, and I hope that amnesia that Rabbi spoke of isn't so strong that we forget our neighbors and our community members.
So before we forget that before we get that amnesia that we are all fearing, you know, one of the things is employment equals equity, right? And so when all these businesses come back on, I really hope that businesses are open to bringing on people with disabilities as part of their workforce and other populations that have been marginalized, even during a really strong economy, that there are people that are going to be hurting when many of us have the opportunity and our lives are going to go back to normal. There's still going to be a lot of people hurting, and we need to not forget about them once we feel comfortable again.
Yes. Yes. In closing, if anyone wants to share something inspirational that you expect to see in the future, or that you've already seen, or any ways that you believe Metro Detroit's going to become stronger as a result of COVID-19. Rabbi Paul, any final words that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think, you know, at Temple Israel, we have a food bank. You don't think of there being a lot of poor people in West Bloomfield, but you would be amazed. We're keeping it going, even though with social distancing, it's very difficult. And the lines have really been now around the block, literally around the block. And what I realized is it's not just that people can't get food because they can't afford it. Some of those people in line can't get food because they can't access it. They can't get into the supermarket. They can't get into, and I do believe that the way that we're beginning to look at supply chains and businesses and everything, there will be some good news coming out of this, and we'll hopefully find a better way to feed people and to make sure that everyone gets fed, no matter what the situation. So that's my hope and my prayer for what's coming next.
Paul?
So I just want to say that you know, JVS and myself have been fortunate to be a part of amazing networks, the Jewish Federation of Metro Detroit and all of our sister agencies working together to help the larger community, having relationships with Life Remodeled and other nonprofits that we're all in this space together. And we are all visioning recovery. And I think we are going to be stronger as a result. I think the other thing that I'm wondering while I'm sitting on this Zoom, Facebook is, how long are you going to let that hair grow?
Yeah, see, that's a problem when you have highlights. And then, you know, now I had to mess it up and not spike it up because then there's this little blonde and a lot of, but when my hair turns gray, I'm just going to tell you, Paul, I'm going to have to dye it all black and then bleach it again. But that's a story for another episode.
Yeah.
Sarah, any words of inspiration?
I agree with what Rabbi said and with what Paul said. I also want to mention that we're in the middle of our Jewish holiday of Passover, of Pesach. And Rabbi, I thought you were going to talk about this a little bit, but I'll do my best. I'm not a rabbi, but the holiday that we celebrate right now is the story of the Jewish exodus from Egypt, and we tell our story every year of this journey from Mitzrayim, or the narrow place, to a place of freedom. And something that I love about the Passover story is there is a strong female character in it. Her name is Miriam, and as all of the Jews are quickly gathering up their things and trying to escape slavery, you know, we're moving so quickly we didn't even leave enough time for bread to rise, which is why we eat matzah, which is disgusting and terrible and bland. But Miriam, this character, the central character in the Passover story, she asks all the women to go get their tambourines. It's like, why? Like, you're trying to escape slavery. Why do you need to go get your tambourine of all the things? And it's because Miriam knew that we would be out of the narrow place, and once we would need to celebrate with music and with dancing, most importantly with our freedom. And so I guess my words are, I encourage all of you to find your tambourines, because I know that we will get out of this narrow place, and we're going to do it together, and we're going to be stronger on the other end.
Amen. Rabbi, I didn't ask you this in advance, so you can say no, but would you like to leave us with a Hebrew blessing, whether that's in Hebrew or in English or whatever language you prefer?
Well, let me share one with you that we, because Sarah did remind me I should probably do something about Pesach or Passover. Let me share you a blessing that ends the Passover Seder. Every year for thousands of years, Jews have ended the Passover Seder with the words, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. And this year at my Seder and at many Seders around the country, I know that people ended their Seder with L'shana haba b'yachad, which means next year we should just all be together.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone, for being together with us today. And thank you in advance for how we're going to come together as a region stronger than we ever were. God bless all of you, and God bless everyone who joined us today on this call. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, Chris.
Yep.